manager in the tropics, remained at his post on Samburan. We doubted whether he had any visions of wealth, for himself at any rate. What he seemed mostly concerned for was the stride forward, as he expressed it, in the general organization of the universe, apparently. He was heard by more than 100 persons in the islands talking of a great stride forward for these regions. Nobody cared to argue with him when he talked in this strain. His earnestness could do no harm to anybody. There was no danger of anyone taking seriously his dream of tropical coal, so what was the use of hurting his feelings? Thus reasoned men in reputable business offices, where he had his entree as a person who came out east with letters of introduction, and modest letters of credit, too. From the first there was some difficulty in making him out. He was not a traveller. A traveller arrives and departs, goes on somewhere. Heyst did not depart. I met a man once to whom Heyst exclaimed, in no connection with anything in particular, "I am enchanted with these islands." This is the origin of the name Enchanted Heyst, which some fellows fastened on our man. He also had other names. In his early years, long before he got so becomingly bald on top, he went to present a letter of introduction to Mr. Tesman, of Tesman Brothers, a Surabaya firm, Tip-Top House. Well, Mr. Tesman was a kindly, benevolent old gentleman. He did not know what to make of that caller. After telling him that they wished to render his stay among the islands as pleasant as possible, and that they were ready to assist him in his plans, and so on, and after receiving Heyst's thanks, he proceeded, "Are you interested in—" "Facts," broke in Heyst. "There's nothing worth knowing but facts. Hard facts. Facts alone, Mr. Tesman." I don't know if old Tesman agreed with him or not, but he must have spoken about it, because for a time our man got the name of Hard Facts. He had the singular good fortune that his sayings stuck to him and became part of his name. Thereafter he mooned about the Java Sea in some of Tesman's trading schooners, and then vanished on board an Arab ship in the direction of New Guinea. He remained so long in that outlying part of his enchanted circle that he was nearly forgotten before he swam into view again, burnt black by the sun, very lean, his hair much thinned, and a portfolio of sketches under his arm. He showed these willingly, but was very reserved as to anything else. He had had an amusing time, he said. A man who will go to New Guinea for fun. Well. Later, years afterward, when the last vestiges of youth had gone off his face, and all the hair off the top of his head, and his red-gold pair of horizontal moustaches had grown to really noble proportions, a certain disreputable white man fastened upon him an epithet. Putting down with a shaking hand a long glass emptied of its contents, paid for by Heyst, he said, with that deliberate sagacity which no mere water-drinker ever attained, "Heyst's a perfect gentleman, perfect, but he's a utopist." It was about this time that Heyst became associated with Morrison on terms about which people were in doubt. Some said he was a partner, others said he was a sort of paying guest. The real truth of the matter was more complex. One day Heyst turned up in Timor. Why in Timor, of all places in the world, no one knows. Well, he was mooning about that highly pestilential place, possibly in search of some undiscovered facts, when he came upon Morrison, who, in his way, was also an enchanted man. When you spoke to Morrison of going home, he was from Dorsetshire, he shuddered. He said it was wet there, and it was like living with your head and shoulders in a moist gunny bag. Morrison was owner and master of the Capricorn, trading brig, and was understood to be doing well with her, except for the drawback of too much altruism. He was the dearly beloved friend of a quantity of God-forsaken villages up dark creeks and obscure bays, where he traded for produce. He would often sail through awfully dangerous channels up to some miserable settlement, only to find a very hungry population clamorous for rice, and without so much produce between them as would have filled Morrison's suitcase. Amid general rejoicings, he would land the rice all the same, explain to the people that it was an advance, that they were in debt to him now, would preach to them energy and industry, and make an elaborate note in a pocket diary which he always carried, and this would be the end of that transaction. I don't know if Morrison thought so, but the villagers had no doubt whatever about it. We used to remonstrate with him. "You will never see any of your advances if you go on like this, Morrison." He would put on a knowing air. "I shall squeeze them yet some day, never you fear." But he never began the squeezing. He was a true humanitarian, and rather ascetic than otherwise. When Heyst met him, Morrison was walking along the street, his head down with a hopeless aspect. Being hailed across the street, he looked up with a wild, worried expression. He was really in trouble. The Portuguese authorities, on some pretense of irregularity in his papers, had inflicted a fine upon him, and had arrested his brig. Morrison never had any spare cash in hand. With his system of trading, it would have been strange if he had. The Portuguese officials begged him not to distress himself. They gave him a week's grace, and then proposed to sell the brig at auction. This meant ruin for Morrison, and when Heyst hailed him across the street in his usual courtly tone, the week was nearly out. Heyst crossed over and said with a slight bow, "What an unexpected pleasure. Would you have any objection to drink something with me in that infamous wine shop over there? The sun is really too strong to talk in the street." The haggard Morrison followed obediently into a sombre, cool hovel, which he would have disdained to enter at any other time. He was distracted. He did not know what he was doing. You could have led him over the edge of a precipice just as easily as into that wine shop. He sat down like an automaton. He was speechless, but he saw a glass full of rough red wine before him and emptied it. Heyst, meantime, politely watchful, had taken a seat opposite. "You are in for a bout of fever, I fear," he said, sympathetically. Poor Morrison's tongue was loosened at last. "Fever?" he cried. "Give me fever. Give me plague. They are diseases. One gets over them. But I am being murdered. I am being murdered by the Portuguese. I am to have my throat cut the day after tomorrow." Morrison's despairing reserve had broken down. He had been wandering with a dry throat all over that miserable town of mud hovels, silent, with no soul to turn to in his distress, and positively maddened by his thoughts. And suddenly he had stumbled on a white man, for Morrison refused to accept the racial whiteness of the Portuguese officials. He let himself go for the mere relief of violent speech, his elbows planted on the table, his eyes bloodshot, his voice nearly gone, the brim of his round pith hat shading an unshaven, livid face. His white clothes, which he had not taken off for 3 days, were dingy. He looked already gone to the bad, past redemption. The sight was shocking to Heyst, but he let nothing of it appear in his bearing. Polite attention, what's due from one gentleman listening to another, was what he showed, and as usual it was catching, so that Morrison pulled himself together and finished his narrative. "It's a villainous plot. The brig is not only my livelihood, she's my life. The sale, of course, will be a farce. There's no one here to bid. That scoundrel Andreas Cosino will get the brig for a song. It is the end for me. This morning, on board, in my cabin, I went down on my knees and prayed for help. I went down on my knees." Heyst inquired with a delicate intonation whether he might know the amount for which the brig was seized. Morrison suppressed an oath and named curtly a sum which was in itself so insignificant that any other person than Heyst would have exclaimed at it, and even Heyst could hardly keep incredulity out of his politely modulated voice as he asked if it was a fact that Morrison had not that amount in hand. Morrison hadn't. "Oh, if that's the case, I would be very happy if you'd allow me to be of use," Heyst said. "I can lend you the amount." Miracles do happen, thought an awe-struck Morrison. To him, as to all of us in the islands, this wandering Heyst, who didn't toil or spin visibly, seemed the very last person to be the agent of Providence in an affair concerned with money. That he should carry a sum of money in his pocket seemed somehow inconceivable. So inconceivable that as they were trudging together through the sand of the roadway to the custom-house to pay the fine, Morrison broke into a cold sweat, stopped short, and exclaimed in faltering accents,